Welcome to the Wealth Wisdom, where money has history and knowledge becomes power.
There's something unsettling about the way economic crises unfold. They don't feel random, they don't feel sudden, and they certainly don't look like natural accidents of the marketplace. Instead, they seem carefully timed. First, markets rise, slowly, steadily, predictably. Optimism spreads. Banks increase lending. Investors rush in. And the media keeps repeating the same comforting message. Everything is stable. Everything is fine. And then, almost as if on schedule, the collapse begins. Markets fall. Banks panic. Governments intervene. And wealth moves. Not evenly, but upward. And every time, ordinary people are caught by surprise, while a very small group seems prepared, even positioned, to benefit. Which leads to a question we can't avoid. Why do economic crises keep happening in cycles? And why do the same people benefit while everyone else pays the price? To answer that, we have to look much further back, beyond the Great Depression, beyond the invention of central banks, even beyond the stock market itself. Because this pattern isn't new. It's built into the structure of modern finance. It starts with a simple truth. Power concentrates. And once financial power concentrates, crisis becomes more than an accident. It becomes a tool. How it started. There was a time when economies were small and local. Villages traded with neighboring villages. Kingdoms controlled their own resources. There were wars and disasters, yes, but there were no global collapses, no worldwide chain reactions. That only became possible after money changed. Money stopped being just something you traded with and became something that could be used to control. This shift began with the rise of international trade. Merchants traveling across continents needed a way to store and move wealth without carrying heavy gold. Early bankers stepped in to solve that problem. They offered storage, protection, and loans. But there was another force driving banking to expand: war. Wars cost money, a lot of it, and far more than taxes could provide. So rulers borrowed from bankers. And once bankers could lend to governments, they gained influence over governments. They could shape decisions about war, territory, policy, and economics, not by ruling directly, but through debt. Debt became power. Over time, private banking families grew networks across borders. Trade routes turned into financial networks. And slowly, power shifted away from kings and governments toward financial institutions operating above them. But there was still one limitation. As long as money was tied to gold, banks could only lend what they actually had. That changed when money detached from gold. The world becomes financial. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, communication and trade linked the world together. Money could now move across oceans nearly instantly. Then came World War I. Economies collapsed. Currencies weakened. Nations fell into debt. People lost faith in existing systems. And in that moment of instability, central banks rose to prominence. But central banks were not purely government institutions. They were collaborations between states and private financial interests. They gained the power to control credit, the lifeblood of the economy. And with that power came something else: the ability to create cycles. If you control credit, you control expansion. If you control expansion, you control collapse. From that point onward, economic crises became predictable, not accidental. The cycle. Every major crisis follows the same pattern. Credit expands, debt grows, asset prices rise, confidence peaks, credit tightens, debt becomes unsustainable, prices collapse. And during the collapse, wealth doesn't disappear. It changes hands. Those with liquidity buy everything back, cheaper than before. This happened in the Great Depression, the Asian financial crisis, the dot-com crash, the housing collapse in 2008, the pandemic liquidity crisis, and the ongoing inflation and debt pressures today. Each time, the many lose, the few consolidate, not by conspiracy, by mechanism. The turning point, 1971. When the gold standard ended, money became limitless. Credit could expand infinitely. Debt became the engine of economies. And the system began relying on one thing: confidence. As long as people believe, the system works. When belief weakens, crisis begins. And belief can be shaped through media, institutions, and public messaging, which is why, from the top, crises don't look chaotic, they look scheduled. Where we are now today, we see record global debt, rising interest rates, declining currency value, stagnant wages, housing becoming unattainable, rising political and social tension. These are not isolated problems. They are signs of another transition, another consolidation cycle, because the goal of the system is not stability. The goal is control. Crises are the method, the core lessons. Crises are not random, they are structural. Wealth is not lost, it shifts. The system survives because most people don't see the pattern. The moment the pattern is recognized, it loses power. Closing. We are living through a transition into a new financial order, increasingly digital, centralized, and programmable. The question is not whether change is coming. The question is, will you face it unprepared or aware? If this shifted your perspective, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, discuss it, look deeper. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And the real question becomes, what will you do with this awareness?